All right, who is the wise guy here? Nintendo console names. All of their consoles have them, even if it doesn't seem real. This is a bit of an out there topic, just going through all of the Nintendo consoles and discussing what's in their name. I don't have any insider info or really much of an insight other than what I think of each name or why I think they chose each name outside of like the facts I already know. Like, why did they pick the name Wii U? Because they looked at themselves in the mirror and thought, we need to humble ourselves a bit. Let's go over all of the Nintendo console names and just discuss what each of them really mean to me, I guess. If I like the name, if I don't like the name, and we're obviously off to a rip-roaring start right here. Game & Watch. Yup. The Game & Watch name is pretty iconic when it comes to Nintendo history at this point. That doesn't make it an amazing name. It is quite literally like the bare minimum of what this name needs to be. It's almost like
I bought a brand new Xbox Series X console, and in this video, we're going to see what happens when you put a foreign disc in it. We're also going to try a bunch of various experiments that I think you guys will enjoy. Now, we'll get into the PlayStation, Nintendo, and just other mystery games later in this video. We'll start with the Xbox games, put them in, just see if they work. So I have a Series X, Xbox One, Xbox 360, and OG Xbox, and we'll start with the OG Xbox here, which I think is actually the one game that won't work. I'm like 90% sure that the OG Xbox Halo does not work on the Series X, which is pretty disappointing. And yeah, literally 2 seconds later, it starts making a grinding noise and tells me that I need to go to xbox.com/backcompat to actually find a list of games we can play. So let's go ahead and take that out, and we'll try out the 360 game next. And there we go. That's what's supposed to happen on an actually backwards compatible game. Starts installing. It's got the cool Xbox 360 graphics there. Let's go ahead and eject it, try out the Xbox One and Series X game, and verify those work. Now, no surprise there. The Xbox Series X and Xbox One game works installing. Now, next up, we're going to start getting into our experiments part of the video. And we're going to
Oh, sorry. I just didn't have my mic. I didn't have my mic on this whole time. I was just setting things up. So I have this program called Camo Studio on my computer and Camera on my phone. That way I could and record the Switch, put it on here, make arenas, and I don't know. I thought it was a fun little. Oh, turn it up. Let me know if this is good. Is this good? Does it need to be up more, down, or is it good? More? Okay. This is as high as it can go. I got this program called Camo Camera on my phone and Camo Studio on my computer. That way I could record the Switch, put it over there, and I also did some other things like get PS Remote Play to work on the computer. So yeah, I think it's good. Thanks, thanks, man.
I try to see what happens when you
Because I the, this thumbnail said I could play PS5 games on the Xbox Series X. I was like, whoa, what? Really?
put a
I wanted
floppy
to check
disk
this out.
inside of your Xbox Series X. Now, obviously, there's no native slot for your floppy disk in your Xbox Series X, so we need this adapter right here, which we already have a floppy disk in it.
Wait, are you Xavier?
It has like 1 megabyte of storage, and we just gotta plug it into the USB port and see what it does. All right, so got it plugged in, and it's not lighting up. There's no noise, no nothing. What? Why is this actually? I'm actually surprised this is not working. Yeah, trying the back USB as well, and it's still not doing anything, which is surprising because on the PS4 and PS5, it starts reading it as external storage, which is awesome. That you could use a floppy disk on your PS4, PS5, so that's not doing anything. Now, next up, I do have an external disk drive. Let me just plug this in and see what happens. All right, let's see. Does it eject? So that's interesting. This one actually does have power and it's ejecting. Let me go ahead and put in this OG Xbox game and see what it does. Okay, got it in there. It's definitely reading up. It's not going to show anything on the screen, but I wonder actually if you go to the system storage, I wonder if it'll show you anything under storage devices here. Let me check. And no, it just shows internal storage. So I don't know what it's doing. I don't know why it's reading or where the data is going to, but oh well, I don't know. Let's go ahead and unplug it, and we'll move on to the PlayStation games next. All right, I got my stack of PlayStation games here, and let's go ahead and start with this Japanese PSP game here, and see if it fits in the slot. I always love trying these to see if it actually fits, and this one fits through the first slot. It doesn't fit through the second slot. If it fit in there, it would be, that's a dangerous game. It's gonna get stuck in there. But next up, we'll try out Tarzan for the PS1, and this is where things are gonna start getting a little bit interesting. We're going to see just how the Series X reacts, if it gives me an error message, if it actually tries to play something, gives me a splash screen. Okay, play disc. So it wants me to install a Windows Media Player. Is it going to try to actually play this game? I don't know what's happening with this Xbox, but I've been trying to install a Microsoft Store and Media Player for like 10 minutes now. I've restarted the console, restarted the downloads. It just told me that the Media Player is ready, even though it's still in the queue. Let's just try it, I guess. Okay, so I guess the media player is working. So I still have the PS1 game in here. It boots to the media player, and then it kicks me out again. No surprise there, PS1 game's not working, but that was just, it kind of just sent my Xbox into a frenzy. I guess the PlayStation doesn't want you to play their games on the Xbox. That might not be true soon, but let's go ahead and try out the PS2 game. Oh, okay, that was quick. It says, make sure you're using an Xbox One game, music CD, or a movie on Blu-ray or DVD. Eject the disc and try again. Now we'll try out the PS3 game here. No error message, no nothing. Let me just spit it back out. And next up, we'll try out, personally, my favorite game of all time. We have this rare copy of Big Chungus featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series by Hello Games. And just in case you didn't know, the Fitness Gram Pacer test is a multi-stage aerobic capacity test that usually gets more difficult as it continues. Now, opening this thing up, we have a map in here of the game. So we got things like, Europe, Asia, Austria, and South America. We got O in America. Only Nada is here. We're missing the other half of Canada. I don't really know why. Let's go ahead and put the disc in, see if it works. Oh. Of course, now it just stopped. Let me just let you guys hear this again. Man, I'll give it to it. It's trying hard, but no luck on Big Chungus. I really wish they would bring Big Chungus to the Xbox.
Oh, 'cause I did.
Really sucks I gotta put it on my
didn't have,
PS4.
like,
All right, next up we got another PS4 game. We got Gran Turismo Sport. Let's try that out. Okay, this one's the same as the PS3 game where it just like spins forever. Never does anything. And last but not least for the PlayStation games, we have the Medium for the PS5. You know, my guess is that it's going to be the same as the PS3 and PS4 where it just spins forever, but maybe we get lucky and it'll kind of just refute it by telling me it's a PS5 game, not a Series X game. You're not going to lie, this thing is, it sounds smooth. It's running at full speed, trying to read the game, but you know, same as PS3 and PS4, no dice. Let's go ahead and put that to the side. Move on to our next experiment, and this one's gonna is gonna get weird. So let's put this Xbox Series X to the side here, and pull out my kind of already pre-mutilated Xbox Series X, and basically, in case you guys don't know, this Series X is from about a year ago when I made a cardboard Xbox Series X. Yes, it was literally made out of cardboard with all these guts inside of it, but I pulled all these out. We're going to use this Xbox here to run some tests, so let me go ahead and turn off this Xbox, plug this one in, and we'll get started. And for this one, we're going to put a disc in here, and then I'm going to unplug the disk drive. What's going on? There we go, okay. But as I was saying, we're going to put a disc in here, and then while the game is playing, we're going to unplug it and just see what the Xbox does. So guys, as I was trying to complete this experiment on the torn down Xbox, you know, unplugging the disk drive while it was playing, I kind of unintentionally did another experiment where basically I was trying to update this console and it got stuck in the update and got to the troubleshooter, and I basically could not do anything. All I could do was restart, and I found out that I had basically this USB piece, the USB and sync button are connected by this ribbon cable, and I found out I had the ribbon cable plugged in backwards, and it was like on fire, like hot to the touch. When I touch it, it's like boiling almost. Yeah, I'm guessing that messed up my Xbox somehow. I don't know. Maybe I just need to let it cool off for a while. But we're going to go ahead and complete the experiment with my brand new Xbox that I now have opened up. And yeah, so I have Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga installed. We'll go ahead and boot it up and just unplug it while it's playing and see what happens. All right, guys, booted into the game. And basically what we're going to do here is, let me just show you what happens first when you just normally eject a game. So yeah, so it just says the person who bought this needs to sign in. So right now I'm signed into a profile that doesn't have Game Pass, because if I did have Game Pass, this game would be working without the disc, which I ran into that issue earlier. We're past that now though. So let's go ahead and boot this back up. Come on Xbox. There we go. All right, so back in the main menu, you can see I can scroll around. So we're gonna start by just taking out the SATA cable here, which we'll just see what it does. I don't know. Now, of course, all the data is actually coming off the SSD. Like, the disk is not doing anything right now except for basically saying, yes, you own the game and you have the game. But yeah, right now, just like nothing's happened. I'm still playing with the disk. There's no data connected to the Xbox. Let me go ahead and try to unplug the power now and see if that changes anything else. So data and power are both out now, and it's still playing. Let me just wait until I load another scene and see what happens. Interesting. Okay, so it's just working without an issue here. I wonder if I can press the eject button now and see what it does. Weird. Okay, so now that the disk drive is not connected at all, the disk drive thinks there's no disk in the system, which makes sense. But it's kind of like, it's almost like a workaround here that you can, let's say you go to your buddy's house, you want to take his game home, play it on your Xbox, you put the Xbox game in, you download it, install it and everything, and then you disconnect the disk drive, pull your disk drive out, manually take the game out, give it back to him. Now the problem is here is, I guess, whenever let's see if I go back home, can I boot this back up? Yeah, it still plays. I'm guessing now if I go back home and actually quit the game and try to boot it up again, it won't work. Or will it? Hold on. I guess you can just play. Oh, well, nope, there it was. It told me I needed to sign in. Okay, so there, now it's broken. So next up here, we're gonna try out some Nintendo games. I have first N64 game, GameCube, Wii U, N64, you know. Man, wouldn't it actually like be so cool if you have a device where you could plug into your USB port, plug in your cartridge, and then it plays on the device? There's actually, you know, there is that device for your PC, but obviously this is not gonna fit in the disk drive, unfortunately. So let's move on to the GameCube game, and this is, this is where things get a bit sketchy. Let's do the GameCube game last on the on the console here. Let's go at the Wii game first, see what that does. The GameCube game is always sketchy. It's a small disc. A lot of times it'll get stuck, and you gotta like actually take your disk drive all the way apart, which I really do not want to do right now. But yeah, let's try out the Wii disc first. So it looks like the Wii disc is another one of those where it just straight up does nothing. It just spins forever. It's definitely spinning in there trying to read, but it's just not showing me any errors or anything. I'll try out the Wii U disc as well. My guess is the Wii U disc will probably do the same thing as the Wii, but you never know. But this one just kind of just infinitely spins. Okay. Yeah, nothing. All right, we'll eject that. And I guess let's go ahead and try out our GameCube game now. Now there is supposed to be a manual eject on the Series X. I've never tried it before, so I don't know how it works, but we're gonna go ahead and just risk it for the biscuit here. Let's go ahead and put the GameCube game in. Yep, it happened. Wait. Come on. Crap. It happened. Oh. Yes, let's go. That was weird. It was telling me, the noise told me there was no game inside, but the mechanism still spat it out. Let me try one more time. Can't believe I'm doing this again. Come on, work. I get I want to get so here. Work. I go back. Clear district install it in everybody's house. Wait until I now, and I'm still for here. There we go. Pass. Have game pass. Says person and just so I have complete the experiment with somehow. I don't know. Maybe I just need to let it cool off for a while. But we're gonna go ahead and guess on 5 button. Start the up complete the wild drive. Whoop, guys there. And for this one, we're gonna put a disk in here, and then I'm gonna unplug the disk drive. What's going on? There we go. Okay. But as I was saying, we're gonna put a disk in here, and then while the game is playing, we're gonna unplug it and just see what the Xbox does. So guys, as I was trying to complete this experiment on the torn down Xbox, unplugging the disk drive while it was playing, I kind of unintentionally did another experiment where basically I was trying to update this console and it got stuck in the update and got to the troubleshooter, and I basically could not do anything. All I could do was restart, and I found out that I had basically this USB piece, the USB and sync button are connected by this ribbon cable, and I found out I had the ribbon cable plugged in backwards, and it was like on fire, like hot to the touch. When I touch it, it's like boiling almost. Yeah, I'm guessing that messed up my Xbox somehow. I don't know. Maybe I just need to let it cool off for a while. But we're gonna go ahead and complete the experiment with my brand new Xbox that I now have opened up. And yeah, so I have Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga installed. We'll go ahead and boot it up and just unplug it while it's playing and see what happens. The game around here, Xbox won't work. I guess you could guys for QB see what that actually. So the Wii disc is in there. True disc is kind of just infinitely. My guess is this could probably do the same thing as the Wii, but you never know. But this one just kind of just infinitely spins. Yeah, nothing. All right, we'll eject that, and I guess let's go ahead and try out our GameCube game now. Now there is supposed to be a manual eject on the Series X. I've never tried it before, so I don't know how it works. But we're gonna go ahead and just risk it for the biscuit here. Let's go ahead and put the GameCube game in. Yep, it happened. Wait. Come on. Crap. It happened. Oh. Yes, let's go. That was weird. It was telling me, the noise told me there was no game inside, but the mechanism still spat it out. Let me try one more time. Can't believe I'm doing this again. So it pulls it in, spins like crazy, thinks there's no game inside, but still puts it out. So, hey, props to you, Xbox. You can accept a mini disc here, and unlike the PS4 and PS5. All right, so that's it for that one. Our next test is we're going to try to see how long we can play without a fan plugged in. We'll boot Star Wars back up, and basically as we're playing, I'm going to unplug the fan and just kind of count down and see how long I can play without a fan. So game's booted up and I'm playing. We're going to go ahead and start, and luckily it's pretty easy. You just got to unplug this one cable here, and the fan will be disconnected. All right, and the fan is out. Yep, and I don't feel any more air coming out the top. Let's go ahead and give a little temperature test on the heatsink here. Okay, it's a little hot, but not terrible. Let's keep playing though. Oh, there it is. All right, so we got a full 4.5 minutes. Keep the console cool. Like other electronic devices, the Xbox will overheat without proper ventilation. I actually like how it gives you an entire list of things to try to get your game to launch again. Let me go ahead and plug it back in while this message is on and see if it'll boot back up. Oh. Wow, kind of plugged in. I have never heard the Xbox's fan go that fast, and there's a ton of heat coming out. But by the way, guys, don't try any of these things at home. I mean, just like, this is not smart. We're booted back up pretty quickly, and the Xbox's fan is actually all the way back down. After like 20 seconds, it's already back down to a normal volume, which is interesting. I guess it dissipated enough heat that quickly. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on to our next test, which is we're going to try out some more games here. So we're actually onto some of the the kind of miscellaneous stuff now. So first of all, I have a copy of iCarly, the complete 3rd season, disc 2. This came from either the Texas Leather or Hampton Hall at some point. This is a DVD, so it should work, but let's plug it in and see what happens. Oh, I completely forgot. You gotta install a Blu-ray player. Great. Oh, there it goes. Okay, finally, after pausing, canceling, and installing about 8 times, it finally installed apparently. All right, let's go back to the main menu, try to play the disc and see. Okay, the disc just. At least it immediately recognizes it's not the right disc. So Xbox One, music CD, movie, Blu-ray, blah, blah, blah. All right, we'll eject that. Anybody else, dude, Scholastic Store, did anybody else buy PC games from the Scholastic store in like elementary school. Whew, good times. All right, next up we got a classic Adam Sandler, Billy Madison HD DVD. This movie's actually hilarious. I haven't seen it in quite a while. I need to go back and watch it. Nope, nothing. It's just like trying to spin up and spins down, spins up, spins down. So no surprise there. It is kind of sad how HD DVD dropped off the face of the earth. Now next up we got a Blu-ray. Actually, let's go straight to 4K Blu-ray. It's no surprise, 4K Blu-ray is booting up. Now next up we have, we're gonna go back to the experiment phase, and I have a very strange experiment that I don't think will work at all, but let's try it. So I have an Xbox 360 disc drive, and if you notice, it has the exact same power port and SATA port as the Series X disc drive. At least I think it does. So we're gonna try to just straight up swap it and just see what happens. Okay, so I figured out that the SATA, the power cable here actually has one pin missing that's on the 360, so it won't plug in, but I do have the SATA power cable from the 360. Okay, cool, it plugged in, it plugged in there. Let's go ahead and plug in our data here. Okay, it's all plugged in. All right, not doing anything yet. Let me go ahead and press the eject button. Oh man, that would have been legendary. Of course, it's a completely different PCB, completely different circuit, different system, so it's not surprising, but I was actually hoping that somehow, some way, you press the eject button and it ejects the 360 drive. That would just, you know, be icing on the cake here. All right, now last but not least, I got a throwback for you guys. If you guys remember the OG days of the 4-disc videos, we're gonna see what happens when you put some money in the disc drive, try to treat it like a vending machine, see if it accepts our dollar bill. So we'll start small. We'll start with a $1 bill, put it in the disc drive, see if it'll try to accept it. Oh, wait, hold on. It's going. Wait, hold on. It actually almost went all the way in if I didn't hold on to it. And now it's trying to eject it. It like legitimately thinks there's a disc in there. That's awesome. All right, let's try the $20 bill. Yeah, it thinks there's a disc in there. Just listen to this. Yep, that's the eject noise, and you can see it's coming out a little bit. Oh man, there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this throwback, a foreign disc and experiment type video. Let me know down below if you like these type of videos. Guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
On. Is it working? Yeah, it's still working. Alright, just making sure everything's working out.
Converting game consoles into portable versions has been a challenging undertaking for modding enthusiasts. But most portable mods are of smaller, less power-hungry consoles. So what if I wanted to make a current gen console portable? I may not be the first to try portabilizing the PS4, but let's see how small I can make it. I've chosen the PS4 Slim, not only because it's the smallest, but because it uses far less power than the original. But also one of the later model numbers, as they have slightly smaller motherboards and a smaller heatsink, which not only saves space, but most likely means a lower power consumption. This PS4 only uses 42 watts at standby and about 80 watts whilst gaming, but that's with an optical drive, which is obviously being left behind due to size. Let's strip this down and see what we can remove. The power supply makes up almost a quarter of the whole console. Its role is to take AC current from the outlet and convert it to DC current, so it's not necessary if we're adding a DC battery pack. We just need to match the two DC voltages that the power supply outputs.
You can put it in the suggestion box. The suggestion box. And I'll make sure to look at it every stream.
Now I'm not going to try and trim this motherboard down, seeing what I can cut off and still have it work, like expert modders have done with other consoles. So the footprint of the portable is going to be roughly the same size as the motherboard. Other than the motherboard, we'll need a controller, a battery, a screen, a cooling system, and a power management system. I'm going to remove all the unnecessary ports to save space. The SATA port sticks out too far, so I'll remove that, along with the Ethernet port, HDMI, auxiliary port, and some of the components that were only needed for those ports. Plus I'll remove one of the USB ports. I need to keep some of the metal shields for heat dissipation, but I can trim them down a bit. You may have noticed I cut off the hard drive shields. The mechanical hard drive takes up too much space, uses too much power, and is vulnerable to jostling, aren't we all? So I'll replace it with an M.2 drive. An even smaller M.2 drive. For this, I need an M.2 to SATA adapter, which is annoyingly the same size as the old hard drive. To the Dremel. There we go, that's much better. Now rather than make custom controls for this portable, I'm going to squash a PS4 controller into the build. Let's see if the DualShock works plugged in without the battery. Yes, awesome, and it only draws 0.10 amps. I don't need the rumble motors, essentially only the motherboard and the buttons. But obviously I'm going to need to relocate all the controls. I'll strip all the connectors off the board to make it as thin as possible. Now it's nice and thin, ready to squeeze in somewhere. I'm not sure how to separate the carbon flex buttons to relocate them, as you can't solder wires to it.
We will cut the
Controller.
down the middle and give half to each of you.
This carbon circuit normally presses up against the contacts on the motherboard, so running them across the console isn't possible, unless I splice them together, which is a bit janky. But then I found there was a DualShock controller model which has separate connections for left and right controls, with separate ribbon cables to match. I just need to harvest these contacts, so I can then run wires from the boards to the original controller motherboard.
Oh.
Then I'll clamp the carbon contacts down with some 3D printed brackets. As for the analog sticks, I'll design a simple board to mount them.
There we go, that's better.
Okay, we need a screen. And I found a suitable 7-inch IPS LCD for $75, which has HDMI, speakers, a headphone jack, and volume control. I was disappointed though, as the aspect ratio meant the screen was cropped. But then I discovered I just needed to change the resolution to the unsupported 1080p, and now it looks great, and only requires about 400 milliamps. Of course, I want to slim it down as much as possible. I don't need this fan socket. I don't need the headphone jack as I'm using the one from the DualShock. I'll remove both HDMI ports, and the volume wheel needs to be relocated. Actually, I'll just lop off this whole part of the board so I can mount it elsewhere. Rather than mess with the whole cooling side of things, I'm going to keep the original fan and heatsink. Now the screen's going to go here, the controls here, with the joysticks below them, and the speakers in the bottom corners. The top right corner of the motherboard conveniently has a cutout where the right trigger can sit. But inconveniently, the left side doesn't. Yet. I didn't want to delve into motherboard trimming on this build, but the triggers would need to sit up much higher otherwise. I tentatively sanded it down, just so I can see if there are any obvious traces I was cutting through. Nah, looks like we're okay. Lithium-ion batteries are 3.7 volts, so I'll be putting 3 in series to make the 12 volts needed. And to cope with the heavy power draw, I'm using 3 sets in parallel, totaling 9 18650 cells for a 116 watt-hour battery pack. Ideally, I would add in a voltage regulator so the battery pack would supply a stable 12 volts, but I definitely don't have room for the large 10 amp regulators. So that means the battery pack voltage will drop as it is drained. And to see just how low the voltage can drop before the PS4 turns off, I'll use a variable power supply and can gradually drop the voltage. The PS4 cuts out at 9.7 volts, so a 3S battery pack will work fine, but it just won't use the last little bit of the battery. However, I realised that I could only fit 9 cells inside the footprint of the motherboard in a weird 7-2 configuration. This meant overly long wires connecting one set of the 3 batteries in parallel, which results in a huge voltage drop of 1.3 volts under load. So I decided it had to be a 3S 2P pack. But I'll do this using 18650's bigger brother, the 21700. These cells are 5000 mAh each, so the pack will have only a slightly smaller capacity, and the footprint is smaller and fits nicely. That's the 12 volt requirement taken care of, but as for the 5 volt requirement, I'll use a buck converter to drop that 12 volt down for those. Now the console is running entirely on the battery pack. Let's see how much playtime we're going to get.
Gaming, 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 all the day I'm gaming. You only get the best of the games, yeah!
And there she goes. Almost an hour and a half, not bad. Checking the battery pack voltage, we see there was only about a 1/4 volt drop under load, and only about 20% power left in the battery. I'm happy with that. For the power management, I'm using a 20 amp BMS, a dedicated lithium battery charger, which will charge the cells properly. However, the Max 745 needs a higher voltage than it outputs, so I'll have to bump up the 12 volt input with a boost converter. That way I can use any 12 volt charger over 2 amps, but it also means I can use a larger 12 volt charger to power the console and charge the battery simultaneously. Then I just need to add a reverse diode to the circuit to prevent reverse power drain. Now I want to be able to disconnect the battery from the load, so the screen doesn't stay constantly on, but also for safety. There's no room for a DC switch, but an AC switch should be fine, especially as this doesn't turn the console on, it only disconnects the battery. And finally, I'll add a battery indicator. This is the diagram for the power system. With 12 volt power coming in from the charger, it gets bucked up to 15.8 volts for the charging board, which outputs a stable 12.6 volts for the battery, where I can choose which one of them sends 12 volts to the PS4 and to the buck converter to give 5 volts to the LCD and PS4. To house all the components, I'm going to use the power of 3D printing and the power of friendship, because I'm using my housemate's printer. Step 1. Measure everything. Step 2. Teach self 3D modeling. My friend said I should take a class and learn it properly, but my ADHD said, get out of my way. I'm going to mount all the components using screw inserts, so everything can be secured well and taken apart easily. Sorry, hot glue. Because the joysticks stick up above the screen, I'm going to use a design that most modern controllers have, and make a protruding hump. I'm trying to make this build as compact as possible, so it's going to be pretty boxy. Now I was going to place the touchpad button in the middle above the screen, but it was too much of a stretch to reach it, so I decided to split it in two and put one on each side to achieve symmetry and give the option for either hand. The rear housing is mostly comprised of the battery pack, the heatsink and the fan. I designed the air intake at the back, with the exhaust channeling to the top of the console. But this had some problems, with only a small exhaust and a hard turn before hitting the battery. So I redesigned it to exhaust out the back, with a larger grille and a scooped channel. And so the intake wasn't sucking back in warm air, I switched the intake to the front and sides, like the original console. Now test prints in PLA are fine, but for the final shell I'm going to need something that withstands the heat output of the PS4. So I'm getting the experts at PCBWay to print it in resin. I selected Power Dark Black for the outer shell, as it has a nice surface finish and decent resistance to high temps. But for the internal parts I chose Somos Taurus, as it has even better thermal properties and these parts are going to be closer to the heat source. I upload my designs and print, and they look awesome. However, I didn't realize how flexible the Somos Taurus prints were going to be, and it's not really a suitable choice. Now because I'm too impatient to wait for a replacement, I stupidly try and print the internal parts myself, which didn't go too well, even with a precision crafted printer enclosure. But I worked out if I printed large parts in smaller pieces, I would get decent results. Once I glued it together, it looked great. If you ignore where I glued my finger to the side. Strength isn't a concern as it's all been glued into the rear housing anyway. Next, I glued some standoffs for the M.2 drive, so it has clearance from the board. I'm mounting it upside down so the wiring isn't crossing over. There's only just enough room to have clearance from the board and fit underneath the shielding. I also need to wire up the HDMI cable, as the ports were too thick. Okay, time to assemble this thing. I'll firmly install all the screw inserts with some added epoxy. The power button and speaker module needs to be split in order to squeeze it in. I'm using the original options and share buttons. I just need to glue on some feet, then install those along with the two touchpad buttons. Then the volume brightness control, headphone jack, and PlayStation button. I'll clamp the charging board down and stick the speakers in. Before installing the display, I need to remove the touch panel because it's too thick. It's a big slab of glass that makes up about a third of the screen's thickness. I'll mount the screen with some double-sided adhesive on the border, but I'm also going to clamp it down. I hardwired the HDMI cable for testing, and I don't want to redo it, so the PS4 is tethered to the screen board. I'm adding low-strength thread locker to all the screws to make sure nothing comes loose. I forgot to add a cutout for the controller's reset button, so I'll just add that now. I was able to squeeze the controller board in above the screen, which makes wiring up all the buttons a lot easier. The Carbon Flex contact boards are glued to the back of their controls. I made a little bracket for the reset button, which I'll just super glue to the frame. Alright, time to wire everything up. I was having a lot of issues with the HDMI connection. Now, an HDMI port is too thick to fit in here, but a mini HDMI port isn't. Being able to disconnect the HDMI cable means I can take the whole motherboard out if I need to troubleshoot. Now I can connect the controller directly to the PS4's free USB port. When I originally chose the power jack, it was only intended for charging, but then I changed the design to have the charger also be able to power the console, but I forgot I needed to upgrade the power jack. So I bought some new 10 amp jacks, which means I need to modify the shell. I'll wire up the buck converter with the 5V rails, glue the charging LED in place, and pop the battery indicator in. Now I wanted to use spade connectors for the main power wires, but there just wasn't enough space, so I ended up having to solder them. I covered the panels around the battery pack with a couple of layers of Kapton tape to shield it from the heat. It definitely wasn't the smartest design to have two halves to run wires between, but after getting the Wi-Fi antenna mounted and finally the fan plugged in, it was done. So I placed the thermocouple next to the battery to make sure it didn't get too hot and burst into flames. As well as some obvious graphical issues, the battery pack was getting a little bit hotter than I was comfortable with. But heat issues weren't limited to gaming, as when charging the console, the front right side got really hot too. But after opening up the console, I noticed something else even more concerning. These have just totally disintegrated. What could have caused this to happen? Was there too much heat? Did I screw them down too tightly? I'm really confused. Oh, okay. That explains it. So I bought a new controller frame and remade them. As for the boost converter, I shielded the base with 5 layers of Kapton tape, I swapped out the heatsink for a better one, and I replaced the diode for a much bigger one. As for the concerning battery temp, I increased the shielding with some extra aluminium fiberglass tape.
Really?
And I added some foam around the exhaust channel to prevent air leakage. But I'm also adding a fan controller, which can increase the default PS4 fan speed by a chosen percentage. I think I'll go with an additional 40%, but I can change it if needed. But I can't be stuffed mounting this professionally.
Everything's going to shit.
Now the battery is staying under 50 degrees, and the external temp whilst charging is much lower. And we're done. Introducing the PS4T. T for transport, or transpo. The handheld is under 5 centimeters thick and comes in at a lean 1.7 kilograms. It has 2 powerful front-firing speakers, a 7-inch IPS LCD, all the original DualShock controls, and dual touchpad buttons. At the front there's a 6-stage battery life indicator, control reset button, headphone jack, plus brightness and volume control. There's a single USB port for data transfer and troubleshooting, a power jack with charging indicator, the original DualShock triggers, the power mode switch, and the original PS4 Slim power button. There's air intake around 3 sides, with a large rear-facing exhaust. Even with the 40% fan speed increase, it's still got nearly an hour and a half of battery life.
Gaming, 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 all the day I'm gaming. You only get the best of the games, yeah!
Because the battery pack exceeds 100 watt hours, you can't take this thing on some planes. But that doesn't mean you can't fly.
Alright, I'm gonna let the arena run through a little bit. I'll be right back. Hold on. Alright. We're back. Wait, what the fuck? Oh, right. Here we go. Neat. That's perfect.
I'm assuming this was the part you wanted me to skip right here.
Hello everyone, this is Andres Restart, and this time we're talking about some surprising Nintendo Switch 2 news that just dropped. I wasn't really anticipating something like this, I don't really think many people were, but this news does suggest something that will ultimately improve our experience on the console. But then beyond that, we also got an interesting update on the Nintendo Direct Switch 1 situation. So there have been rumors for a Nintendo Direct about Switch 1 happening this month of February. We got another rumor from a credible place on that situation, so we'll also be touching on that and what that may imply for the bigger Switch 2 Direct this April. But before going forward, let me take this moment to point out that I am aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers. Pretty different news, similar to the patents we discussed last, this patent that is surfaced about Switch 2. And similar to the
Oh my god, I don't actually stop with the
calculator on TikTok that can supposedly play real video games, and I found it, I bought it, and in this video, we're going to unbox it, test it out, tear it down, and see if it can actually play games. Alright, so opening up this box, we got a big bubble wrap thing. We also have a random charging cord. Let's go ahead and dive in. Holy crap, guys, this thing is massive. I did not expect this calculator to be this large. I mean, look at my hand compared to the size of this thing. Like, holy crap, these buttons are huge. I mean, at least we got a large screen here to play our PS5 games and stuff on here. By the way, I think we can play PS5 games on it. We're going to try. But you can see it's from GHLBD. No idea who that is. We also got some Chinese writing here. We got a speaker, it looks like. We've got our, just little little rubber feet back here so you can sit it down because that's how large it is. You can't actually hold it in your hands while you're playing. And clearly all these buttons are just like a calculator. Now let me see what was included on this slip here, right here. Okay, so it includes like a little manual just printed out. And the first thing it says is to charge it for 5 hours. So guys, I did get this thing to turn on. I've spent many hours with it, and oh man, I have a lot to show you guys. There's this thing. It's cool, it's terrible, all at the same time. But before we get into it, I want to do some size comparisons here because this thing, I mean, as you saw, is a monstrosity. So let's just give you a better perspective of what's going on here. So first of all, we have a Xbox 360 case here, and you can see the game itself is almost as large as the calculator. Next up, we have probably my favorite comparison, which is a Wii. Like, this thing is literally the same size as a Wii, just crazy. And we also have a PS2 Slim, which is actually a little bit smaller than this thing, which is, or maybe about the same size, again, about the same size as a Wii. And then next up we have two things. First of all, I have a Switch Lite, and the Switch Lite screen is actually, I'd say about the same size as this tablet screen on the top. Yeah, this thing is just a monstrosity. Also got a PSP, and the PSP is a pretty small device, and you could probably stack, 3 or 4 PSPs to fit this entire frame here. And last but not least, I have this monstrosity to compare it to. Now this is a portable PS2 I bought from AliExpress quite a while ago. I'll throw the link to the video on the screen, but yeah, even this calculator does not stand a chance with this PS2 monstrosity here. But guys, let's go ahead and put all these things to the side, turn this bad boy on, and I'll kind of walk you through what's going on here. Now first, to turn this bad boy on, you actually have to hold both of these buttons right here for like 5 to 10 seconds, and it'll eventually turn on. There you go. You got your Android, your A50 processor. So this is an Android tablet basically built into this calculator. That's what I'm assuming. I have not torn it down yet. We will get to that later. But let's go ahead and wait for it to boot up, and then I'll show you what's going on here. So we got to boot it up here, and like I said, this is basically an Android tablet. So they have it set to 2 different launchers here. So you have your Holo launcher, which takes you to the actual Android tablet, where they have some preloaded stuff. We also have the multimedia computer, which I think is just the calculator, and you can see it's just a pretty basic calculator. So 63 times 45 equals 2,835, which has got the comma in the wrong spot. You got some other functions here. I don't really know what those do, to be honest. I also got that, don't know what that is. But yeah, it's a calculator in an Android tablet. Honestly, let me know if you guys go pick one of these up and you're still in school. Take it to school, try to use this, see what your teacher says. Let me know down below, or send me a picture. I think it'd be kind of funny. Let me go ahead and go to apps here. And actually, let me take a step back. Let's go to the settings first, and I'll kind of show you what's going on inside of this thing. So the first thing you'll see clicking on About Tablet is we have a quad-core A50 in here, which is, I looked it up, it's an all-winner A50, which is from like 2018, I think. And it does have Android 9, this means this thing's pretty old. I mean, I think we have Android 15 now. And scrolling up to our storage, we actually have, let's see, I think we have 8 gigs built in, which is honestly not bad considering this is a calculator. Yeah, otherwise it looks like an Android. But going back to this main menu here, I can show you what you guys all want to see. So by default, we had some apps built in here. Let me go to the apps, and I'll just kind of run you through what I downloaded. So first I downloaded Chiaki. We're going to try to do some PS5 Remote Play. I also downloaded the native PS Remote Play app. I also got Flappy Bird. We got a PS4 simulator. We have, what else did I download? Opera for our web browser. We got DuckStation. We got SNES 9X. We also got Whatnot and YouTube and a Windows 98 simulator. So we're going to try a bunch of stuff here. And let's just start right here at the Super Nintendo. I have Super Mario World on here. We're going to go ahead and try that out. I haven't actually tested it out yet, so I'm not sure how it runs. I did hook up a PS5 controller to this thing earlier because, by the way, these calculator buttons just like don't work on the Android tablet. I tried to find some info online about that, and I can't figure out how to get these buttons to work on the Android tablet, which is unfortunate. But we're going to use a PS5 controller here, test this out, and just see how it works. And I mean, unsurprisingly, this game is running without any hiccups at all so far. No frame drops, no just nothing. I mean, it is an SNES game. It's from the 80s, so you kind of expect this to work without an issue. Also, in case you didn't notice, we do have some on-screen controls here. So in case you don't want to use a PS5 controller like I am now, yeah, using the touchscreen for trying to play this game is not fun because I'm trying to run or sprint at the same time I jump, and it's just like I can't do that. All right, so Super Nintendo, no surprise, works without an issue. Now going back, I have a few other things I want to try here. Now first, we're gonna go to DuckStation, which is PS1 emulation. We're going to pull this up and see how that runs, because that's going to be a true test here. Okay, well, maybe I need to mess around with this for a minute, because it says my GPU is not supported, blah, blah, blah. All right, let me try to figure this out, and then we'll try to boot up this PS1 game. All right, guys, we're back. Figured out it was just an issue with DuckStation. For whatever reason, it's just not working. So I downloaded another emulator, and we got Spyro the Dragon right here. Let's go ahead and boot it up, see if it works, and see how it runs. Oh my gosh. Dude, I'm just on the loading screen. Just listen to this noise. Yeah, you know it's gonna, you know we're gonna have a bad time when you start hearing that crackling and you can just see how slowly it's moving. Oh man, that's not great. So guys, we are playing it. I mean, not gonna lie, it is working. It's just running at like, I don't know, 75% of normal speed. Clearly very slow. I mean, you heard earlier from the sound, it's just like very crackly and lagging. Not very surprising. I mean, this is a pretty low powered chip. You know, it's old. It's in a cheap device. I mean, you can buy Android tablets on AliExpress for like 30 bucks that are the same thing as this basically. But let's go ahead and check out some more of these apps that I downloaded here on this this good old calculator. So one thing I downloaded, which is really interesting, is this Windows 98 simulator, and I booted it up once, and it actually appears to work. Let me just show you. So like there it is. It's got the boot up sound and everything. And dude, this is so authentic. You can scroll around the mouse. I can open up. I can do the calculator. Let's go. Oh, I can't use the buttons though. But we got the calculator on the calculator. It's Inception, and you can play Minesweeper, Solitaire. Good stuff there. Of course, I don't know. It's just kind of just like a throwback to when I was a kid. You got Paint even. I don't know. It's just a random app there. But next up, the really hard-hitting one that I really want to try is Chiaki. I want to try to connect this to my PS5 and see if I can play PS5 games on this calculator, because that would just be insane. So let's give it a go. All right, guys, moment of truth. I got the PS5 plugged in. I got all my Chiaki stuff entered in here. Let's go ahead and press the register button, and hopefully it works. Yo, let's go. Dude, this is sick. Let's go. We are definitely working though. Let's go ahead and, I think it's just funny to use the on-screen controls for a PS5, so let's go ahead and do that for a second. Oh man, this is crazy. We were playing PS5 on a calculator. Can you believe that? Let's go ahead and boot up a game though. Let's go with the classic Astro's Playroom, and let's play around a little bit and see how it runs. Yo, let's go. All right, ooh, you can see it's like super jumpy. I'm not surprised considering we are on Wi-Fi with the PS5 and on Wi-Fi on this old device that's using 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. So not surprising at all that it's not perfect, but it's actually not horrible for given our situation here. And it's just insane that we are currently playing PS5 on a freaking calculator. Yeah, I mean, this thing it's super jumpy, but I mean, it's good enough to actually be playable. Like the lag itself is not horrible. It's just the fact that every like 5 seconds you get these like, the screen just like goes crazy and glitches and stuff. But I mean, like, again, given our circumstances, this is pretty crazy. Now, another one I want to try real quick is PGA Tour 2K23, because it requires some pretty precise timing here. So let's just kind of see how that runs. Actually, not bad at all. But again, glitching like crazy. Kind of what we expect here. But let's go back and keep trying out some more games. So another one I really wanted to work is this PS4 simulator. I have no idea. I've never used it before, but I found it online. I installed it here, and it loads up. It's supposed to look like just like a PS4 interface, but whenever I double tap right here, it crashes. Let's see if it crashes again. And yeah, sure enough, every time it just crashes. And yeah, I mean, there's some of the stuff on here. YouTube doesn't work because I don't have Google services. You know, we ran through some of these other ones. Last one I want to do is Flappy Bird, and then we'll open up this device. So, wait, what did it just tell me? It was built for an older version of Android. Flappy Bird is so old at this point that even Android 9 is too new for it. But hey, man. Oh, that is embarrassing. All right, I gotta do that again. Oh my gosh. Dude, I suck at this game. But let's go ahead and open this bad boy up and see what's inside. So flipping to the back, it looks like we have 6 screws, and it looks like they're actually Torx screws, which is surprising on a device like this. But let's take them out. Yo, let's go. Here we go. All right, so we have, I didn't show you guys earlier, but we do have a speaker on the back here. And it's like, it's not a good speaker, but it is a speaker. And you can see here, let me go ahead and flip it around so we can see a bit better. We do have our stripped down tablet over here. It's literally just this blue PCB board, and it's got one ribbon cable from here over to the keyboard buttons, which is funny. We also have this little, let's see, let me kind of take a closer look here. Okay, so it looks like our A50 and everything else is kind of housed under this little metal shield right there. Oh, we actually have an SD card slot. Oh, okay. We also have a micro USB slot here. Okay, so interesting. So this thing is basically linked to the USB-C port, I guess, through this ribbon cable here, because like I said, this is quite literally the only cable going from the blue board to the green board. Yeah, nothing else special here. We got our ribbon cable to the screen. I don't see anything too crazy here. And I'll zoom in a bit on here so you guys can look up these numbers if you care, if you want to look up the more specifics about these specific devices. But another thing, let's see, we also have that's our antenna. I guess that's our 2.4 gigahertz antenna, either that or Bluetooth. No, it says Wi-Fi, so that's for our Wi-Fi. We also have a little power switch here, a reset, volume, and update. Okay, hold on, let me try this power button here. Okay, yeah, sure enough. So you can just press the power button here on the inside and it turns it on, which is, not surprising. We do also have, obviously, a battery down here. Let me go ahead and flip it around and see how big it is. So taking a look at the battery, it actually takes up a lot of space here, which is interesting because the capacity is not like super high or anything. It's got 10 watt hours at 3.7 volts, 2700 milliamp hours. And just for reference, I'm looking at my iPhone 13 Pro and it's got 3100 milliamp hours at 3.87 volts and 11.97 watt hours. So basically the iPhone has like 10% more capacity than this one does, which is actually that's not bad for this because this thing is so underpowered and such an old device that this thing would probably last for quite a long time. But there you have it, guys. Very simple inside, nothing crazy going on. And let me know down below what you guys think about this device. I think it's, like I said, awesome, but terrible at the same time. Don't recommend you buy it. A little too expensive for what it is. But guys, hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Ah, phone died. Ugh, I'll shut down the arena. This is why I don't use items. My phone died. That was the camera, so I could record the Switch. I was literally playing with two the two detached Joy-Cons because I had like literally nothing else. Hold on, let me.
I just bought every single PlayStation handheld ever released, which is actually a lot more than you might think. Because you've heard of the PSP, but this was actually not Sony's first handheld. It was the Pocket Station. Released in 1999 in Japan for the equivalent of just under $40 today, Sony marketed this little guy as a cross between a memory card for the PS1 and a digital personal assistant. But what makes this their technically first handheld is that it can also play its own games. This thing is minuscule. The buttons aren't even labeled, probably because you wouldn't be able to read them anyways. It's got some pretty simple clock and calendar functions. That's the digital assistant side of things. But then if you want to play games, you have to download content from a compatible PS1 game. Like this. So I believe you just flick it up from the bottom. Hey, look at that. So it's going to go into the memory card slot. And that is our game downloaded. What a weird process. Okay, so you flick right from the home screen and that enters you into Crash World, at which point you get 3 different games to choose from, and they are all in Japanese. They have done such a good job distilling the platforming feel of Crash Bandicoot. It's a 2D top-down game with a 32 pixel width, and yet it's so clear at all times what's going on. This Pocket Station definitely makes you feel the whole constraint breeds creativity notion. And wow, look at the jump! Kind of insane. Got a very basic speaker at the back, just classic 8-bit sounds. It's no Dolby Atmos. Hardware doesn't feel very hard wearing, but it'll be interesting to see at what point in this journey the quality of materials picks up. In terms of specs, I'd describe the Pocket Station as cute. It's able to run this dinky little Crash Bandicoot virtual pet game thanks to a very basic 33 kHz CPU and 2 KB of RAM, with an LCD screen capable of 32 by 32 resolution. But what's actually quite
I have what? What do I have? Okay, by the way, new new ID is 272 GSM. 72 GS 72 GSM. There we go. Because he's gonna ask me to enter the arena. I can't. Okay. Play.
With a 24-bit color depth and 272p resolution, that's, by the way, 128 times the number of pixels versus the Pocket Station, and way more than the DS, it was very much cutting edge, and actually very similar in quality to the first iPhone's display, except 2 years even before that. And Sony really took advantage of that display. Do you remember when I said the Pocket Station had a 33 kHz CPU? Well, the PSP had dual 333 megahertz CPUs. On a very basic level, that is easily 8 times the performance of Nintendo's DS, and no joke, 20,000 times the performance of their previous console. Not to mention the PSP had a proper console controller-esque analog nub, and that this was where Sony announced their brand new media format, called the Universal Media Disc, or UMD. And this was interesting. While the competing DS game cartridges could hold an absolute max upper limit of 512 megabytes of data, UMDs, being basically like mini CDs, could hold 1.8 gigabytes. And that meant not just that developers could run wild with their games, making the PSP the very obvious real gamer's choice against Nintendo, and racking up a ton of actually big-name console-like exclusives, but it also cemented the PSP as one of the best portable movie players around. Honestly, everything about the PSP generation just excited me. Everything felt so tactile and physical, and I love that about gaming. Fun fact, this was my actual PSP carrying case that I used for my entire lifetime with the thing. These UMD discs, I thought they were the coolest thing. Like this whole ritual of flicking open the pack, of slotting in the UMD and closing it back up, was music to my ears. And also, the fact that it could play movies meant that I so remember the feeling of browsing those Blockbuster aisles, just finding the perfect Friday night movie to watch on my PSP. Okay, so you go into the game tab and you click UMD. It's been so much time since I've heard that. One classic trope of the PSP that I'm remembering now is this scratching sound. That's the disc being read. It was all the time, but especially when you're on like a loading screen, which also used to last really long. So with subsequent consoles, when they replaced that with flash storage that was silent, it was a massive quality of life improvement. It's really hard to convey how much of an improvement this is from like the Pocket Station. You can totally see how people at the time were just blown away by this thing. Because yeah, this doesn't look quite as good as a PS2 game. It's very much got the same feel. It's got the same kind of scope in terms of the kinds of things you can do in it. The audio is also miles ahead of the Pocket Station. It's proper stereo sound. I'm getting slaughtered here. The analog stick as well is a massive quality of life improvement versus any other handheld that had existed up until this point. It actually makes big worlds like this natural to traverse. You can also so tell when you're using this original PSP that it was absolutely designed with the PlayStation 2 in mind, to look as consistent as possible so it could be the perfect companion. So yeah, all the odds were stacked against Sony when they launched, but they just so happened to create the perfect cocktail of what the world was looking for at the time. This thing far surpassed Sony's small-town sales expectations, but it was still getting outplayed by Nintendo's DS. To which you might be thinking, why? We just spent 2 whole minutes talking about why the PSP was more advanced. And well, I think it's partly the games. Nintendo had the behemoth that was Mario, which did half their job for them. I can't tell you how many school coach journeys I had where the entire activity was just a massive 8-person Mario Kart multiplayer sesh, where incredibly out of those 8 people, only one of them actually needed to own the game to do that. And partly also the price. Sony's hardware launched at nearly $400 in today's money, and that coincided with a pretty devastating Nintendo price drop to just $200 the very same year. Coincidence? I think not. So, Sony tried things. They released a bunch of hardware revisions over the near decade of the PSP's lifespan, starting with the sleeker PSP 2000, or the Slim model. And this is the console I grew up with. The number of hours I sunk into this machine right here, unspeakable. Nothing even comes close. And actually seeing where it comes from, this feels like a massive leap. It's gone from 23mm thick on the original to 18.6. And the weight of the thing is down from 280 grams to 189. And you feel that trimming a lot more with a console that you hold in your hand than you ever would on a home console.
But it wasn't just slimmer. The PSP Slim came with the one major upgrade of, assuming you had the right cable, being able to output directly into a TV. This is literally Nintendo Switch functionality in 2007. Sony was so ahead of its time. Do you know what? The quality fares really well when translated even to a much bigger screen. Nothing about this looks in any way subpar. Oh, this also reminds me of one of the things I used to spend so much of my time doing, changing my theme color. Tasty Treat applies a cookie theme to your entire device. Kind of adorable though.
But Sony wasn't done yet. It's very clear that Nintendo's DS Lite, which had very quickly overtaken the original DS in sales, was front and center of Sony's mind. They were clearly doing everything they could to try and bottle that magic into their console, which led us to just 1 year after the Slim, the PSP 3000, or Slim and Lite. I always just imagine this as Sony grabbing a microphone and screaming, "Yes, we have Lite too!" Notice also how the boxes get smaller each time, as Sony trims down what it's giving, and then also figures out how to cram what they are giving into as little space as possible. Now, I wouldn't call the Slim and Lite a revolutionary console, but considering it came out so soon after the Slim, these are solid improvements. A brighter screen with 5 times the contrast ratio and an anti-glare coating, plus a microphone. You could literally Skype your friends on your PSP. This thing was so advanced, but it still didn't sell in massive numbers. So Sony decided, screw it. People clearly want something that is actually as slim and light as the DS Lite. We're going to take that to the absolute extreme with the PSP Go. And I so remember seeing this thing in stores for the first time. Unbelievably excited that a handheld this cool existed, unbelievably jealous of anyone who actually got one. This thing, inspired by Sony's Milo personal communicator, is tiny. It's even cuter than my Milo communicator. And the form factor, it's just drool-worthy. This is one of the most robust, satisfying opening and closing mechanisms to date. It's even nicer than most foldable phones even today. But it did have a problem. See, PlayStation Portable as a platform, it wasn't designed with this level of portability in mind. You know, these UMD discs? Well, one of these, plus just the hardware required to read it, just that, is nearly the size of this console. So, they axed it. The PSP Go couldn't play any kind of physical media, and you had to buy everything from the PlayStation Store. To compensate, they did give you 16 gigabytes of inbuilt storage, which with PSP games, it could go quite a long way. But, I mean, if you think the world now is not ready for all digital gaming, the world then was definitely not. Any real gamer hated the idea, and as gamers, we like to let people know that. This thing was such a commercial failure, in fact, that even a very dramatic Hail Mary, buy a Go and get 10 free games promotion by Sony could not save it. These were 10 proper games, by the way, in total worth more than the console itself, but people just wanted nothing to do with it. So to actually make sure they shifted the bulk of their PSP hardware before the next generation came out, Sony had to do the one thing they hadn't tried up until this point, getting the price down to the DS's level, the PSP Street, which apart from the Go is, I think, the coolest looking PSP with this slick matte finish. And they've also done that while shaving the price down by about $100 with the removal of stereo audio, the brightness buttons, and actually even Wi-Fi. That sounds major, but for most PSP users, including myself, Wi-Fi was not really a big part of the experience, so this was a smart revision. It's just, this price cut, it needed to come much earlier in the console's lifecycle, when people were still forming their opinions about the platform as a whole. I mean, the PSP at this point had been out for 7 years, which is enough time that people were starting to turn their attention attention to what's next. And so the idea of a cheap version of the last-gen console with less features, it's not exactly going to set the world on fire. But clearly, all of these console revisions, while none of them individually spectacularly successful, they did all pull together to push the PSP to a total sales number of 82 million consoles, which for a company whose last handheld was little more than a fidget toy is impressive. The stage was set and hype was building for PSP 2, which ended up being called the PlayStation Vita. And with the PSP being my favorite console of all time, I cannot tell you how excited I was for this thing. And when I eventually got it in my hands, the hardware was every bit as spectacular as I had dreamed. Let me explain. That one stubby little analog stick had become two much more substantial ones. The entire back panel was a touch-sensitive layer to add another dimension of interactivity into games. It had 6-axis motion control brought over from the PS3, front and rear cameras with face detection and head tracking, small cartridges instead of large discs, full 3G connectivity to take the social features to the next level. Not to mention the materials. They went from cheapish plastic to metal and glass in many areas. The PSP was already premium in my eyes, and so moving from that to this was like my entire worldview imploding. And then the screen. The PS Vita screen was its single biggest asset, a 5-inch 544p resolution that's 4 times the number of pixels of the PSP, capacitive multi-touch panel. At the time it launched, it even felt ahead of many top-of-the-line smartphone screens, let alone the PSP. And this was also at a time where the idea of touchscreens on devices that were non-smartphones was still very new and very exciting. So, how powerful was it? Well, take the PSP and multiply it by 10. So yes, 200,000 times the Pocket Station. This was a technological behemoth. So let's take it for a spin.
Oh man, holding this in my hands, turning it on for the first time, it really takes me back to that moment when I first got my hands on one. I remember unboxing it for the first time, and before touching the console, my hand was almost quivering because I spent so much time just fantasizing about it, watching this trailer again and again and again, just dreaming about what it would be like to be able to reach inside and grab the thing. Okay, so you turn it on with this really solid, actually metal button. Oh yeah, then they have this whole page tear unlock animation. I just think that was so cool. And one thing becomes very clear having just used the PSP, this is nothing like it. I think the PS Vita has paid very close attention to smartphones at the time, and in a sense has tried to replicate the success of those. I just love how bouncy and filled with personality the user interface is. And one of the coolest things about this console is you no longer just had to do one thing at once. You could have multiple applications open. I remember being so excited by the idea of cameras. Oh wow. 0 processing. What you see is what you get. Okay, so now we're going to load up Assassin's Creed Liberation, which is basically the PS Vita's equivalent of what we just played on the PSP. Well, the speakers are much better too. They were still good on the PSP, but here you notice that they have much more space for you to hear the different instrumentals. Oh wow, yeah. I mean, the clarity on the character model, the buildings, the amount of texture you see on screen at any one time is very clearly a generation ahead. But you know, this also reminds me of one of the big problems I had with the Vita, which is, it kind of hurts me to say, but I feel like developers were too ambitious. I feel like Sony, when they were marketing this console, they tooted the horn of this is basically like PS3 power on the go. So, you know, developers built their games accordingly, like very ambitious, massive worlds, and it just couldn't quite handle it. And so it was such a common PS Vita trope for games to be really pretty, but just run at poor frame rates, which, to be honest, you can even see right now. The Vita also had so many gimmicks, like the back touchscreen and the front and rear cameras, which I think they came with a lot of promise, like this idea of you'll be able to play augmented reality games and you're going to have some next level immersive experience, but it never really happened. All of that stuff kind of relies on Sony being able to convince developers to adopt it, and they just didn't. And so with any serious game like Assassin's Creed, you kind of would have just been better off without it and having saved costs on the console. If you could look past those compromises though, then yeah, the Vita was a tasty treat of a console.
And the best part is that it seemed like from the launch that Sony had also worked out pricing. Compared to the original PSP, which launched at the equivalent of $400 in today's money, the Vita was $330 by the same metric. So the stars were lining up, as were the pre-orders from core PSP fans. The PlayStation Vita was shaping up to be a firecracker of a console launch, with even exclusive games from massive brands like Uncharted ready to go day one. But then, as soon as this thing hit the mass market, the Vita fell flat. Something had clearly gone majorly wrong. I would put it down to 3 things. 1, that while the
I
price of
know,
the base
I
console
know.
itself was reasonable for its tech,
know,
the
I
price of its
admit that,
proprietary
because-
Sony-made memory cards was not. You pay a full extra $100 to get a 64GB card, which feels like Sony's roundabout way of trying to recoup costs on the console. 2, the Vita had poor timing, partly because it was beaten to the market by Nintendo's shiny new 3DS, partly because, unlike the PSP, it was launching into a market where most potential users had just bought new smartphones and were enjoying the novelty of gaming on those, and partly because it was cannibalized by Sony's other products. While the Vita launched in Japan in 2011, it didn't hit the Western market till 2012, and this was not good, because it's the very same year that
sorry.
the hype started overflowing for their next home console, the PS4, which would launch in 2013. And so the Vita had gotten people excited, those who bought one loved the hardware, but then the stage was swept from under its feet almost immediately. As soon as that happened, the Vita was already on the way down, but what finished it off was 3, that the stream of games also followed. Because the thing was so unique, it was a complicated, expensive platform to develop for. So who's gonna bother doing that the second you start to see the attention moving on? Credit where due, Sony did take one stab at revitalizing interest in the Vita, and also correcting for the effective tax on storage. And that's the fairly predictable at this point, PS Vita Slim, which they decided to give its own internal storage so you didn't have to buy a memory card. An internal storage of 1 gigabyte. What makes it even worse is that as soon as you start using an external memory card, you're effectively locked out of using that internal memory, rendering it completely useless as anything more than a buffer while you crawl your way to a computer to drop $100 and wait for your Vita memory card in the mail. And while, yes, it's pretty cool that you could now have PS Vita power in a body that is way slimmer and 40 grams lighter,
guys battle
it's
it
pretty
out.
clear that Sony didn't exactly pour their love into this revision, because that lightness actually came at the cost of both the size of the rear touch panel and the quality of the
Yes, Yoil
screen,
is-
with the console's prized OLED display being swapped out for a less fancy, cheaper, less vibrant LCD. Sony stopped releasing sales figures after a while, which kinda tells you all you need to know, like they just want to shut their doors and pretend it never happened. But it's estimated that they only sold a grand total of 16 million PS Vitas in all. And that put Sony in a bit of a pickle, because when a console doesn't sell well, it doesn't make sense to invest millions building big games for it. But then at the same time, if Sony did nothing and just let the thing die, then that erodes trust in their future consoles. This idea that they're only going to make them good platforms if lots of people buy them. So they smartly pivoted the Vita away from being its own major platform and more towards being the recommended companion for the PS4 through Remote Play, and also set up this new indie-focused initiative to get as many lower-budget, smaller developer-made games as possible on both Vita and PS4. Because a lot of these games were very simple, both consoles could easily run them, and you could have cross-buy with the ability to pick up where you left off on one console on the other. And for these smaller indie games, the Vita did actually become the perfect platform to play them on. And it was such nice hardware that I know people still do to this day, which feels like as nice of an exit that the console could have had. But just before we get to the next generation of handheld, Sony had one more trick up their sleeves before the PS Vita died out. The weirdest handheld revision I've ever seen in my life, the PS TV.
Essentially, the PS Vita handheld, just without the screen, and the controls, and the fact that it's handheld. So, we'll stick that down. You connect to it via your PS4 controller, which is actually kind of all the more confusing, because if you have a PS4 controller, you probably have a PS4. And if you have a PS4, why do you want a PS TV? Because, yeah, it's a media box, it plays games, it watches movies, but it's going to watch movies at a lower quality than the PS4, and it's going to play games that were really designed with the portable form factor and the portable controls in mind. So, yeah, clearly this product was designed as a way to repackage the PS Vita's proposition to try and shift some more units of the thing's hardware that had already been manufactured. And to be fair, it's priced really generously. I just don't know what the exact use is. And this is actually a really good example of that. If I try and load up the same Assassin's Creed Liberation game that I just played on my PS Vita, it won't open. It's just not supported. It must need some of the core PS Vita hardware to actually function. I definitely feel like Sony also tried to borrow some of the things that made the Wii really successful, the way they framed the social features, but they never took off in the same way.
But the writing was on the boardroom
Oh my
wall for
God.
Sony. And as far as handhelds were concerned, it said, don't bother. So for literally a decade, PlayStation fans retreated back into their living rooms, with Sony focusing all its efforts on the home console front. Until now. Enter the PlayStation
Okay, this guy
Portal,
knows
the
20XX
biggest box so
for
far
sure.
in the video, and really a completely new kind of handheld. Wow, this thing feels like a beast. And in so many ways, this is worlds apart from Sony's other handhelds. Like, the screen is 4 times the resolution of the already pretty
Okay,
crisp
yeah,
Vita. They're no
I
longer
can
just
tell
good
that
for a
he's-
handheld,
he's
they
a
are literally
competitive
one-to-one
Smash
with your
player.
actual PlayStation 5, including the same
he-
adaptive
he
triggers
knows-
that can let you
he
feel
knows
tension.
competitive
The
Smash
catch is that, well, it's empty. This thing doesn't play
You know what's
games
funny,
natively, but it
actually? I
streams
actually
them
set this
from
to
your
low.
PlayStation 5.
Oh, but it
And
appears-
while that might
it
sound
appears
sucky,
so
which I
awful.
understand, and I know a lot of people online are saying this thing makes no sense, in a way it might actually be my dream console.
Okay, so every other console that I've sat here in this chair and tested for this video, I've played with at some point before in my life. This is completely
If I
new
just
to me.
get one
So you press on
audio
that and it
on
opens up a very literal portal, and I guess when it finds your console, you go through that. That is awesome. The thing that I'm trying to discern here is how much or how little does this feel like I'm just playing on a
Damn, man!
handheld as opposed to streaming it? I mean, as far as the quality of the home screen goes, almost indistinguishable. Every bit of text is crystal clear. Wow. I mean, this looks absolutely insane. It's really hard to
Alright,
separate the
YouTube-
fact that it's not
should
running on
dial
this
out 'cause
console. I mean,
I'm-
all I have in my mind is the PS Vita as our kind of point of comparison. And compared to that, this feels like not one, but 3 generations ahead. The latency between, let's say, when I move the joystick and the character moves is very low, to be honest. There's a tiny bit of lag, but not necessarily more than even games that aren't streaming. I mean, just having like a wireless remote, for example, does introduce some latency. The only thing that does remind me that I am streaming as opposed to playing natively is the dynamic resolution. So it seems like what happens is every time you kind of turn around and it's got a... Ooh. Okay. Oh, do you know the, the haptic feedback on that? Wow. So it seems like it's programmed to make its top priority to avoid lag. But obviously, when you're doing things over the internet, naturally there will be points where you get high signal, points where you get low signal. So while the frame rate and the fluidity is pretty consistent, the quality not as much. I know that for so many people this makes no sense because you've already got the PS5 that can
think
play the
the
game,
Smash
you've already got
method is
probably a
it.
bigger screen and
Like-
probably a better sound system too. But for me, handhelds just give this feeling of freedom that you don't get with anything else. It does very much look like if PlayStation made a Switch. Like it's the exact mirror of that. Massive tablet-like screen in the middle and then big controllers on either side. One thing I don't like about this is that it doesn't support normal Bluetooth headphones. Apparently for the purposes of latency, Sony's saying that you can only connect directly to Sony headphones. Whether or not
Oh, it's
that's
a dog!
true, it would still be good to allow users the
No!
option to use something else. And I'm
Not
dead.
fight until the dog is gone. We don't want the dog. Alright, let's go. And as soon as that happened, the video ends. Great. I'll switch the video after this match. Oh, what time is it? 9:29. I'm gonna end the stream in like 30 minutes because 11 o'clock's my bedtime. You know, other things. Damn, that's good. Maybe it just looks better. Oh, come on. Kazuya?
Well, here I go, back at it again with the unnecessarily long ranking videos. This time, I figured it'd only be fitting to go back to my end of the year tradition, and complete the trifecta of adult animated comedies. That's right, today we're gonna be reviewing and ranking every single episode of The Cleveland Show of South Park. Created by Colorado residents Trey Parker and Matt Stone, and beginning its run 25 years ago, this has easily been the show I've watched the most through the years. Sure, every day from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. I was watching Sky's 2-hour Simpsons block, and from 9 to 10 I switched to BBC 3 to check out some Family Guy, but from 10 p.m. until around 2 in the morning, my eyes were glued to Comedy Central to check out whatever South Park reruns they were airing that week. I could not get enough of it. I recall finding the show when I was very young. My sister's friend had the classroom scene from the movie as her ringtone for a while, and then around the age of 7 is when I actually witnessed it for the first time, when my dad put on the medical fried chicken episode, which had me bawling on the floor, pun intended. From that point on, I knew this was going to be the show I spent every night watching. My uncles would go into their storage and find their old DVD box sets for me. My great aunt found a bunch of old plushies in her attic. I wanted to consume as much of it as humanly possible. And so today, I guess it's fitting that we're going to go on a journey throughout the series' history, taking a look at each and every episode. The movie, and even the most recent specials, we're covering it all. And unlike The Simpsons, Family Guy, and SpongeBob, not only is there way less episodes to cover, only around 320, but over half the show isn't considered bad. It's a Christmas miracle. While opinions may vary, it's generally regarded that South Park kept up a very high level of quality up until around season 20. Which is amazing if true. I haven't seen a majority of these episodes in years, so I'm really curious to see if I only have so much admiration for the show because of a dozen or so standout episodes. And upon seeing it again after so long, my rose-tinted glasses will be removed and I come out of this whole ordeal with a new view on what was once my favorite cartoon ever. I suppose only time will tell. And so without further ado, let's get to reviewing and ranking every single South Park episode ever. Starting with...
Bombs everywhere,
Dude,
man.
this shit is rough. We're jumping straight into it. Cartman Gets an Anal Probe tells the story of... well, you can take an educated guess. We're introduced to our 4 main characters. The everyman Stan, his clever best friend Kyle, the crude poor kid Kenny, and the fat spoiled one Eric, who they just refer to by his second name Cartman, dealing with whatever random problem comes to them in the quiet mountain town of South Park. Even just from looking at the footage here, you can see how rough this all is. Being the only episode that Matt and Trey did entirely using construction paper. The intro looks really dinky, the characters are constantly jittering when they speak, and they even confuse Stan and Kyle at multiple points and have the wrong one talking.
Come down here, you stinking aliens!
But there's just something about how rough it is that makes it so confusingly charming. I forgot about how much stuff they had in the early years that were later ditched for one reason or another, that we'll get into more as we go on. Like Miss Crabtree, their bus driver, Chef being so prominent, and Kenny dying in every episode. Also, for fun, let's put a little counter on screen for every Kenny death. Here it's from being trampled by some cows in a car. My opinions on this pilot is very similar to the way I felt about SpongeBob's, in that I appreciate it a lot more than I actually like it. Matt and Trev expressed how much they disliked the first 3 seasons of the series, and while I remember enjoying season 2 and 3, I guess we'll have to see how I feel after watching them again after so long. But with this one, I completely get what they mean. For example, there's many times in these early episodes where they'll just cut to a character saying something that isn't really funny, but it also doesn't progress anything in any way. It just feels like something they forgot to cut out, you know? Their performances are so stilted to the point where it sounds like they're speaking directly to the camera half the time, and overall it's just not all that clever or funny. There's a few fun gags, like the show tune bit with Eric, but overall, a lot of the humor simply derives from the characters swearing or farting, which at the time was revolutionary, I'm sure, but hasn't aged the best with how much other shows, and South Park itself, would later outdo the, honestly, quite TM stuff going on here. And nothing terribly interesting is done with the characters. I know it's a pilot and all, I can't expect much. But Cartman is just probed, that's all I do with him. Kyle wants his brother back, but no real tension is drawn from it. Stan wants to get with his crush Wendy, where, again, not a whole lot is done. And Kenny is just there. Feels like they were much more concerned here with telling jokes when, again, I don't think that aspect is very strong either. Still though, Cartman Gets an Anal Probe is an important part of not only South Park history, but I'd also say in animation itself, showing that you don't need the most fancy and appealing animation out there to push boundaries or attract an audience. I can see 100% why this became such a cultural phenomenon, and so for that, I think it's pretty special. Volcano sees the four boys head up into the mountains with Stan's uncle Jimbo and his buddy Ned to do some hunting. Right off the bat, you can already see them start to expand the world more with a plethora of new secondary characters who will continue to appear throughout the show. Again, like Jimbo and Ned, then we have the mayor, Stan's dad. Dude, it was so weird seeing him here being nothing like his current iteration who chews up the scenery in any episode he's in.
Oh, I forgot I was
And the jump from
supposed to
stop motion to
disable the
digital was quite
system.
jarring. Although that might be because I'm watching this cartoon from 1997 on a 75-inch TV with its HD remaster. So I can imagine the changes weren't as noticeable when it came out, but I personally do not like this look at all. You can barely make out the textures on the boys, making their colors way too saturated. And the line art is super clean and thick. Reminds me more of fan art than something official. Hoping this issue doesn't stick around throughout the rest of the season. Another thing with the classic South Park style I miss in the new episodes is how cartoony everything looked, especially the animals. Like, compare this rat from season 1 to this rat from season 6, you know, it's just less charming to me. Still though, Volcano is a much more well-rounded episode in contrast to the previous. Characters actually have things to do. Like Stan is saddened that his uncle likes Kenny more than him because he sees him as a wuss for not killing anything. Also, Kenny gets crushed to death by a lava ball. Cartman is trying to scare everyone with Scuzzlebutt, who never fails to make me laugh.
What? Scuzzlebutt's real? Oh my god! Look at his leg!
Hi kids, I'm TV's Patrick Duffy.
And ultimately, it's just a step up in every way. Nothing mind-blowing, I don't think it's a classic or anything, but Volcano is a step in the right direction. Here we see them lean heavily into something they're most known for, centering entire episodes around the idea of mocking celebrities. Their first target being Kathy Lee Gifford, who I don't know anything about outside of this episode, so consider me shocked to find out she doesn't have pink hair. Cartman wins an award for an essay he wrote, which is going to be given by her. And so to get ready for his TV spot, he begins eating Wiki and 4000 to bulk up, causing him to get even more obese.
Later.
While Wendy, out of jealousy, tries to find out how Eric truly managed to win. Not really a fan of this story. Again, for the time it must have been amazing considering all the beefcake merchandise out there for Cartman. But the idea never really goes much beyond, he's fat, and he gets fatter. I much prefer the stuff going on with the boy's teacher, Mr. Garrison, who under the influence of his little puppet Mr. Hat, wants to kill Kathy Lee Gifford for an incident that occurred when they were kids. I love that Mr. Garrison is also balding as a kid. Whether intentional or not, it's been smart so far to give a side character the spotlight for the B stories. You know, in the first it was Officer Barbrady, and Volcano it was Stan's dad and the mayor, and here it's Mr. Garrison. Naturally expands the world while still keeping focus on the hijinks between the boys. Kenny's killed by a flagpole. Saying all that, I still think Volcano is better. Again, that Cartman stuff isn't all that funny to me beyond the initial idea, and as I said, I don't even know who Kathy Lee Gifford is, so focusing an entire episode on her really doesn't do anything for me. Things have not really been looking all that impressive so far in retrospect. Could South Park be one of the rare shows that starts out kinda whatever and actually gets better over time instead of worse? Let's find out. Okay, here we go. Big Gay Al's Big Gay Boat Ride is a really solid one, with Stan finding out that his new dog Sparky is gay, and wanting to try and change him so the other kids will stop making fun of him. Only 4 episodes in and they're already tackling homosexuality.
I don't know.
And while everyone makes fun of him, and new character Big Gay Al is obviously a very stereotypical caricature of a gay person, I can't help but love him when he ends the whole thing by walking down into his suitcase and flying off into the sky. It has a good message too. It's clear they're not trying to mock him in any way, more so using the concept as a jumping ground for a story about Stan learning to accept his dog the way he is and not trying to change him. Kenny is tackled and killed by footballers too in a pretty funny side plot about the adults of South Park taking this kid's sporting event super seriously, to the point of planning a bomb in the opposing team's mascot that is set to go off when John Stamos' older brother sings the High F and Loving You. I love the random ass designs they give to their humans in these early seasons. They're so fucking uncanny, it's great. I enjoy Big Gay Al's Big Gay Boat Ride. I'd probably consider it to be the show's first good episode. Top of the list. We get our introduction to Stan's older sister Shelly here, who's been beating him relentlessly because she's a massive bitch. Well, in the meantime, Kyle is having a genetic engineering war with another kid in class, Terrence, with him trying to make his new pet elephant have sex with Cartman's pig, so he can hopefully make tiny pig-sized elephants. I love the reveal of his elephant too, it's so casual.
Hey Kyle, what's that elephant doing? You mean this one? Yeah.
We also see Dr. Mephisto for the first time, along with his little monkey assistant thing, who is in fact the father of Terrence, helping his son with his project by cloning Stan, who kills Kenny by tossing him in the microwave. You bastard. I remember as a kid, episodes like this, mainly from season 1, were really rare to air. I assume because of how low quality they are. Whoa, that was really harsh. I assume because of how low quality they are. So anytime they would show one on Comedy Central, it always felt very special to me, with this being one that I was hyped as fuck to finally see after wondering what the hell that Stan clone was from the intro. And while the episode itself isn't amazing or anything, I'd probably say it's fairly average for season 1 standards. It'll always stand out to me for how I saw it as a kid. Going under Volcano. More new characters! This time it's Stan's grandpa, who's over 100 years old and at this point just wants the sweet embrace of death. Don't we all? The big commentary they do on how nobody wants to discuss the topic of whether or not it's immoral to assist somebody in suicide if that's what they really desire. Not even Jesus wanting to throw his hat in the ring. Who also, by the way, just casually lives in South Park with his own public access talk show. It's amazing how underplayed this is. This one actually freaked me the fuck out when I first saw it years ago. The idea of being a defenseless little boy running from your life from death himself, knowing that a simple touch can kill you, with him saying nothing other than the signs of a Minecraft zombie. He kills Kenny, by the way. You bastard. What really drags it down for me is the Terrence and Philip subplot. Being this show that the boys like to watch that angers the parents in town for being nothing more than fart jokes and swearing. Yeah, they're not very subtle about this.
Yeah, I think that parents only get so offended by television because they rely on it as a babysitter and the sole educator of their kids.
They go to the cartoon's headquarters to shut it down, but for something they appear to take such a strong stance on, the idea or joke really doesn't go much beyond the adults all have diarrhea and laugh about it because they are hypocrites. You know, that they'll laugh at this stuff in real life but get mad when it's in a TV show. If you find that satire biting, then you'll be glad to know that this joke is repeated throughout the entire thing. It's done much better in the movie. Off topic, but it's funny to see all the little things they haven't set in stone.
I'm gonna end it a little bit early because I'm tired.